Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here. Welcome back to another Cardano video. And today I'm sitting down with another founder that is building on top of Cardano, but building something to, I suppose, bridge. Well, not bridge is the wrong word, but bring in liquidity from other chains. I'm sitting down with Robert. He was on the channel a long time ago at this stage. So, Robert, it's great to sit down and have a chat with you again. You want to give an introduction to yourself, and then we'll get into Mynth, MyUSD, and everything that you're building.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Paul. It's good to be on the show again. So I guess to kind of give it a bit of background, yeah, I've been involved in tech for quite some time, been in Bitcoin since 2013, and most my time now is spent with Cardano for the last 3 or so years. So predominantly work with synthetics and now working on Mynth, which is a cross-chain swap protocol. So that's kind of been my occupying all my time as of late is just getting everything launched and getting all these blockchains integrated into Cardano.
Great. So I suppose you mentioned Mint. That's what you're doing now. I'd say some people might be familiar with it, or they might know of MyUSD, which is, I think it was nearly a byproduct. It wasn't the main focus of Mint. But do you want to talk about the two of them, I suppose, and clarify what Mint is aiming to build?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about MyUSD just quickly. So we did launch that last year, 2023. And this at the time was just aimed to bring stability into Cardano. So originally, when we launched Mynth, and I'll get into some details about that in a moment, but originally we launched it with IUSD, and then IUSD had its depegging event and it wasn't able to keep its stability. And at that time, there was no other stablecoin that was reliable. There was JED, but it wasn't suitable for our purposes. And then USDM wasn't quite ready. So that's why we quickly put together MyUSD. And that to date has been the most stable Cardano stablecoin. It's maintained its peg quite well. It has caused some confusion because now people associate MyUSD with Mynth. They are two separate products. It just so happens that MyUSD was created by the same team who created Mynth. And we are in the process of kind of separating those brands. So MyUSD protocol is going to be its own separate thing. Right now, there's a lot of things that are combined just because it's been easier because we only have the one team, but eventually MyUSD will have its own team. And now that the stablecoin ecosystem's kind of matured a lot on Cardano, that has definitely shifted our focus back towards Mynth itself. So to get into Mynth, that
Actually, just
is,
before, sorry, don't mean to interrupt you, but just to finish off on MyUSD, what type of stablecoin is it for people who will have heard of algorithmic and fiat backed, and just to get that out as well?
yeah, so it would be technically like a synthetic wrapped stablecoin. So it's collateralized by other stablecoins. So originally it was collateralized by USDC and USDT on other blockchains because they weren't available. So we had to have some cross-chain interoperability there. Now it's shifting to be completely collateralized by Cardano native assets. So we have a partnership with Enzymes who are launching USDA, and that's going to be the primary collateral. And then there will be some lending and borrowing built in once that MyUSD team is kind of fleshed out a bit more. So to put it short, it's a synthetic stablecoin backed up by other stablecoins.
Okay, is that kind of like DAI or something different?
It's a bit different in concept to DAI because DAI was more a CDP based stablecoin, and so that's more similar to what IUSD is. MyUSD doesn't have CDPs yet, so it's been a wrapped stablecoin to begin with, and then CDPs will be added on top. So that would be kind of the focus, like the main differentiator. Like DAI was CDP and then wrapped, and MyUSD is wrapped and then CDP. So there's just like different kind of philosophies behind the two, but in the end, like they will kind of merge in types of like support and technologies they have, just like different ways and different kind of security premises that have been developed along the way.
Okay, good. Yeah, look, I think we all know within Cardano right now, we need more stablecoin liquidity for all of DeFi and to attract more traders to get involved. Anytime there's big price movements in the market, you can see all the stablecoins, they slightly lose their peg because people are trying to go into them and there just isn't enough liquidity. But moving on then to Mynth. So what is Mynth?
Yeah, so Mynth is at the core a cross-chain swap protocol. So what that means is that we bring interoperability into blockchain ecosystems. So originally, why I started building Mynth was had just kind of had like the beginning explosion of Cardano DeFi and everything was going well. But once you're in Cardano DeFi, you have this problem of being unable to do anything else. So you're kind of stuck. And so then you would then send some tokens to centralized exchanges in order to get out and go through like 5 different hops and do KYC and all that nonsense. And so that was really like the core issue that I saw. And so what Mynth has introduced, not only to Cardano, but the greater blockchain ecosystem, is this ability to have every token be interoperable. So that if you want to go from a Cardano native asset to a asset on the Ethereum blockchain or Solana, you'll be able to do that seamlessly without even using a bridge, without using any custodian, without any centralized intermediary between that. You'll just be able to hop using the Mynth protocol. So at the core, Mynth is kind of a B2B product. And what that means is our target is other businesses. So the first one that I think a lot of people in Cardano know about is the Begin wallet. So that has been the first integration partner of Mynth, where they have built some tooling to allow users to actually interact with Mynth. So that's kind of another thing that people may kind of realize once they learn a bit more about Mynth is we don't have a website ourselves. We rely on others to actually build the websites and then allow them, the users will use their products in order to interact with Mynth. So Mynth is just that infrastructure layer that allows the actual interoperability. So you can kind of think of it as the fabric so that users can actually go between the different blockchains without really thinking about it, without having anyone in the middle.
Okay. Yeah, and with Begin, I think there's a savings protocol or something to do with savings there as well, isn't there? It's one of the
Yeah, so
products.
So there's two components. They have a savings module where it's integrated into MyUSD, and then they have the yield bearing stablecoin aspect, and then they have the cross-chain interoperability. So they have just introduced Bitcoin interoperability. So we're going to be helping people go between Cardano and Bitcoin, and also integrated is the ability to go between Cardano, Polygon, and Arbitrum, so that when you have your ADA or your stablecoin, you will be able to just send that directly to another chain. We find that most users are using Begin right now to move their stablecoins from Cardano to their centralized exchange, and that just saves a few hops, so that you don't have to then swap to ADA and then send your ADA to like Binance, for example. You just send your stablecoin from your Begin wallet, and then you receive USDC or USDT in your centralized exchange, so that you don't have to be exposed to like the volatility of ADA.
Okay. That all sounds brilliant. And you said without having a centralized third party that this can happen. But how does something like this work? So I have Jed in my wallet and I want to cash out on Kraken, but over there I need USDT or USDC. How does the process work going from Jed to me seeing whatever stablecoin in my Kraken account?
Yeah, that's a great question. So um, Mynth is this peer-to-peer kind of, you can think of it as a DEX that lives across the different blockchains. And so what is actually happening is that there are these liquidity pools that are made up of many individuals that are providing different tokens. And then when you want to actually facilitate a swap or initiate a swap, then you will post that intent on chain, and then there will be a facilitator that will be able to fulfill that swap request. So you can kind of think of Mynth as this like layer where it's just taking intentions, and then you have other individuals who are fulfilling those intentions. So if you have JED, for example, and you want USDC on Kraken, what was actually happening on the Cardano side is you will lock up your JED in a smart contract with the intention that I want USDC sent to this address. And so then we have another party that will actually do that. So we'll use the liquidity pools and actually facilitate that. And so then they will accept that request and send the USDC to that destination address. And then from a user perspective, your swap is completed because you have the USDC in your desired destination. But then from the facilitator, they have one extra step where they actually need to unlock that smart contract so that they can take the tokens back out. And so this is where our Mynth Lizard network comes in. And so Mynth Lizard is this network that sits on top of Cardano to validate fact statements. And this is one of the unique selling points of Mynth, is that because our lizards are able to verify any fact statements, we can integrate easily with many different networks, so blockchain and fiat networks. And so these lizards are verifying facts, and then they emit those fact statements into Cardano, so that when the smart contract goes to actually look if that if they can unlock the token, the fact statement is validated, and then the facilitator who did the swap is able to actually take the tokens from the smart contract and have them in their possession. So you can just think, at a really simplistic level, a user locks tokens into a smart contract, and then another party will actually fulfill that request. And then from the user perspective, that swap is completed, but then the other user who facilitated it, they have an extra step to actually validate on chain that they did do the work, and after that's validated, they get the token.
Okay, and I know is Thorchain is it similar to what Thorchain do, or I know they have, I only know at a high level for that they have liquidity pools on different chains, and is it something similar to that?
So it's very similar in concept. And so this is something that we investigated very deeply when we were actually ideating behind Mynth. So the reason that we kind of built Mynth is because there wasn't any other compatible system for Cardano at the time. And there already existed Thorchain and Maya protocol, and Maya is going to be supporting Cardano. They were supposed to be launching a few months ago. I think that's been delayed. But the way that these systems work is they actually have developed a separate blockchain. And so we did analyze that within our team, but philosophically, it just doesn't really sit right with us to develop a brand new blockchain in order to allow these cross-chain swaps, because you have to then introduce a new factor of trust. And so we wanted to use the inbuilt decentralization and security of Cardano without introducing a brand new blockchain. And so that's why we're using the consensus mechanism of Cardano in order to actually facilitate those. Now, the caveat of that is Cardano doesn't have interoperability support. And so the benefit of a system like Thorchain is that because it's a separate blockchain, they actually have a lot more capability to have these cross-chain interactions. And so we have developed in a way to have just one-way interaction. So that's why there's this two-step process for the actual facilitating of the swap. But from a user perspective, it's just one action. Whereas a ThorChain model is where the liquidity is kind of locked up or bridged in this secondary blockchain, and then this is creating this AMM type of pool, and then that is able to actually facilitate the swap. Now, a problem with that approach is that it has a lot more attack vectors, and so in the past, ThorChain has actually been attacked, and people have lost money. Fortunately, they have increased the security since then, and I hope that they will continue making that strong. But that's just not the risk vector that we wanted to introduce into Cardano. And so that's why we have this one-way communication to have security as this core element so that we can minimize that threat vector. And so by minimizing the exposure that we have, we can actually facilitate cross-chain swaps in a more less trusted manner, so you don't need to rely on additional trust factors, and then have security as a core tenet of the protocol.
Okay, so mainly the center of trust for all this is a Cardano smart contract, then, is it? That I trust my funds into it, and then it has to get a proof from the other side that the action has happened?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how we wanted it to be designed. So then you're only trusting Cardano, which is we're already trusting Cardano. We're in Cardano. And then even when you're doing cross-chain swaps between non-Cardano blockchains, so say if you want to do a swap between Bitcoin and Ethereum, you're still then only trusting Cardano. So it's a different trust model versus something like a ThorChain or a Maya, where you are trusting the ThorChain blockchain or the Maya blockchain. In Mynth's case, you were trusting Cardano.
Okay, I like that. There's less attack vectors, as you say too. And so we talked about the use case of Jed going to Kraken. So if I wanted to swap some of my Cardano or a Cardano native asset for Bitcoin, which we're hoping is going to get more popular now or we want to go in the other way. Let's say that Bitcoin into a Cardano native asset. How does that process work? I presume it's similar to going with the stablecoin into Kraken. And
Yep.
is it all native? It's not wrapped assets that people are getting?
Yeah, exactly. It's the same sort of process. So um, you can so we already understand how the JET to USDC works, right? And that's easy because it's on the Cardano side. But if you're going from BTC on Bitcoin to ADA onto Cardano, then that is a little bit more involved, but it's the same sort of process where a user is then just sending BTC into what we call a Mynth Smart wallet, and that is controlled by our Lizard network. So then that can kind of be unlocked. And you can, on the Bitcoin side, because they don't support smart contracts, it's essentially just a more involved multi-sig that's controlled by the validation on Cardano. But those funds are then temporarily stored, and then you have the same process where there's a facilitator that will actually do that swap, and then the user, from the user perspective, it's done, and then they can go ahead and validate that fact statement on Cardano in order to get the permission to sign the transaction to unlock the funds from the Bitcoin smart wallet, and then that is how they get that BTC. Under the hood, we are doing predominantly one-to-one swaps, and so what that means is like we go from say MyUSD to USDC or USDT, because that's easy from an arbitrage perspective. And then from Bitcoin, what we would be doing is going from BTC to a BTC equivalent on Cardano. And then because it's an intent-based system, you can actually forward the request to a DEX. And so that is how we kind of get around these like liquidity issues, where we can just assume that the value is always going to be roughly the same, and so that it really simplifies how much exposure the arbitrageurs have to actually facilitate those swaps. Because once you're in the Cardano world, then you can have any sort of aggregated swaps. So you could, for example, even forward it to fetch and then have the token get converted into anything that you want. But the key here is that because it's an intent-based system, you as a user just provide your intent on chain, and then that intent can then be fulfilled by the protocol.
Okay, and you said there about the be wrapped version. So for Bitcoin, it would be swapped into a wrapped version on Cardano and then swapped to the assets. So me as the end user, I don't get wrapped assets. I just get back whatever the native asset is. It's the protocol handles all of that behind the scenes, is it?
Yeah, exactly. So Mynth handles all that complexity, and we also will find the best route. So if it's not in your best interest to like have that wrapped asset in the process, then you will find a different route. But usually it's easier to use the wrapped asset during the actual transfer process, because that's how the arbitrageurs are able to make their money, because if you think, if you were going to swap BTC directly for ADA, because there's that time dilution, you are then exposed to one side of the trade kind of being going above the other. But when you're just doing a cross-chain interaction where two are equivalent, then there's a lot less risk for you as a facilitator. But then once you're in the Cardano side, then you can forward that request. But as a user, you don't care about all of that. That's why we're building this. And so with the current system, if you want BTC, if you have BTC and you want ADA, all you do is you send your BTC to a BTC address, and then you'll receive the ADA. And we have an ability. There are some demos on our X account of like how to actually generate those addresses. So basically, you just put in your Cardano address, and you select Bitcoin, and then that will create a Bitcoin address that basically encodes an intention. And so whenever BTC gets sent to that address, it automatically will get forwarded to your ADA address.
Okay, and that's already built. It's there for, and I know you said you don't have the website yet. It's for others to build on top, I suppose, or build interfaces, but that's already there.
Yeah, it's all there. I mean, we're in beta for this specific functionality, and we're working closely with some integration partners. But yeah, that's all there. It's all working. We have a few caveats. We have to iron out some bugs here and there. But yeah, we're very close to having a public launch, and then the main thing that we are waiting for is other integration partners to come and put a pretty user interface on this for us.
Nice. And I suppose there is actually, for the likes of me who might have liquidity to get involved, is this open for anyone? Or the Lizard network you talked about, is that open for anybody to come in and join and I suppose help decentralize it or gain more trust?
Yeah, absolutely. It will be. That is the design. It's an open decentralized system. For the time being, everything is managed by the team, because we want to be able to move quickly. And towards the end of 2025, we are going to be opening up the Lizard network to beta testers, and then we anticipate going full public in 2026, where anybody will be able to provide liquidity and anybody will be able to operate a Lizard. And Lizards are quite straightforward. We're kind of designing them to run alongside SPOs, so existing Cardano nodes, where you're just validating some data and you're essentially just running some software, and then you send that you send your signature request onto the Cardano blockchain. So it's quite simple from an operational perspective. But right now it's a closed system, but we have a lot of that code open source already, and then as it is further developed and audited and secured, we'll be opening that up to the public.
Great. And yeah, if you can build something that can just run alongside a Cardano relay, then it makes it very easy to start getting hundreds of people who'd be willing to run that software fairly quickly. As you're the only ones that's providing liquidity, does that limit the throughput that you can have now in terms of swaps? Obviously, liquidity is needed there for it.
Um, yes and no. So it at the moment, like we handle the throughputs pretty well because of the efficiencies that we have kind of designed into the system. And so this was like one of the core designs that we thought about when we initially made Mynth, because we were building for Cardano, and Cardano has traditionally been a very low liquidity environment. And so we've always been conscious of the fact that this needs to work in a low liquidity environment. And the reason that we can facilitate these with low liquidity is because we introduced this concept of a streaming swap, and the system is quite fast. So our average swap takes a matter of seconds to minutes. So and then you can kind of refill that. Now, what a streaming swap is it allows you to break one large swap into multiple smaller swaps. And so say if a user right now wanted to do a swap of $100,000 worth of stablecoin on Cardano for the equivalent on Polygon, that liquidity wouldn't right now be available.
Mhm.
But you could do our system would be able to handle 20,000, and then in a couple of minutes it'll be able to handle the next 20,000. And because it can do that quite quickly, that $100,000 order will be completely filled within a matter of minutes. And so that's how we have built that system, so that we don't necessarily have a liquidity problem. It's more of a timing problem. And so as the system matures and as more liquidity providers come into the ecosystem, then it becomes even a faster system. But even today, we could handle a lot of volume without any significant issues.
Okay, nice. And there is a token coming as a part of this. Where does the token fit? And I know there's an IDO then across a huge number of blockchains. I'm interested to find out how that works too. But the token, where does it fit first?
Yeah, so we initially minted the token in 2023 upon the mainnet launch of the beta protocol. And at that time, the token was used to actually do the swaps. You needed the Mynth token in order to do a swap. Since then, we introduced this concept of a Babel fee, where you can use any token for actually paying the fee. Under the hood, you were still using the Mynth token, but say for example you want to swap JED for USDC, you then pay your fee in JED token, and then the protocol is then swapping that JED into in the Mynth token, and then the Mynth token is what is actually being used for paying the lizard operators. So the whole network is dependent on the Mynth token. We have our staking rewards in Mynth. We have the lizard operators that get rewarded in the Mynth token. So all the fees are collected in the Mynth token. And then it is deflationary. So there is an amount of Mynth token that is burned from the protocol revenue that's generated. So the goal of the token is to provide some decentralization, so that you actually need to stake that token in order to run a lizard and be part of the network. And also there's the decentralized governance aspect, where you will be able to vote on different features and control some parameters for the protocol. So that is the actual token side. There is a token, but we wanted to make it so that an average user, they don't need to even know that the token exists. So only if you want to operate a lizard will you actually need the token. And then if you want to speculate on the success of the Mynth protocol, of course you're welcome to buy the token as well. But for an average everyday user, thanks to our Babel fees, you don't actually need to use the token.
I think that's important, is that sometimes people hear there's a token and they have to use a token to, or they have to hold a token to use a protocol, then it's a turn off straight away. But the fact that all that happens behind the scenes, then they don't have to care about it unless, like you said, they want to get involved in the network and kind of speculate either on the token itself. So you did mint the token, I think you said 2023 there, but there is an IDO coming up. How is that going to work, or what's the process?
Yeah, and so when we launched the token, what we did is we did an airdrop to our early supporters in order to have them try out the product. And so the initial core supporters got the token for free, and that created an organic market. So we never set a price for the token. We never did any sort of pre-sale. We just got the community involved, and then they organically establish a price. And so for the past year and a half or so, the token has been trading organically, but with a caveat of very low liquidity. So up until this point, it hasn't really been possible to buy the Mynth token in any significant quantity. So for example, if you did want to run a lizard and you're not a team member, it's very difficult because you can't get access to enough of the Mynth token without causing huge amounts of slippage. So that brings us to the IDO in January 2025. And what this event is doing is serving two purposes. First, to kind of showcase our cross-chain capabilities, and second, to kind of distribute more widely the Mynth token and bring in more liquidity so that users can gain access. So we are doing an IDO on an IDO is an initial DEX offering. So we're doing that on 9 different blockchains, and of course Cardano is one of those blockchains. And then the 8 others, I think Solana, Polygon, Arbitrum, Tron, Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, probably one I'm missing. But we're doing them on 4 different launch pads, and so you'll have the ability to use a variety of different coins and also USDC. So if you want to use TRX, or you want to use ETH, or you want to use USDC, or you want to buy with ADA, you will have that ability. It's all going to be same price, but just denominated in different currencies. So the ADA price would just be the same as the equivalent as what is in ETH based on the exchange rate at that time. And depending on which blockchain that you participate in, you will get the Mynth token on that blockchain. So you can use any of the 9 different blockchains with any supported wallet, and you'll be able to hold the Mynth token. So that is what we are doing in January.
Okay, and with it being on multiple different chains, then will people be able to move across chain, or will they just bridge the token, or would it be like the intents where I want to swap 100 Mynth for 100 on Cardano?
Yeah, so we're really trying heavily to avoid this concept of bridging for a user. So the Mynth token itself is going to be using the Mynth protocol in order to actually facilitate those cross-chain transfers. So if you want to say you have your Mynth token on Ethereum and you want to move it to Solana, you'll use the Mynth protocol itself to actually do that swap. And it'll be one-to-one. And so you as an end user don't have to worry about bridging, about what bridge to use, about how that process works. It's just going to be the same interfaces that Mynth is already integrating in, where you just want to do one swap to another, and it'll be as simple as transfer. So I want to go from Solana to Ton, and I'll just be able to do that swap, and then it's just going to change address, and it's going to be the same token. So that's really been our goal. It's like it's the one token that exists on 9 different blockchains, soon to be even more. But it's going to be a very seamless experience to kind of transfer those tokens around.
Okay, that sounds good. And the final one from me is just on. So you talked about how quick the transfer, how quick the swaps can take, the cross chain ones. How is slippage on things like that? Because obviously, if there's a few hops, you lose, or you might lose a small bit each time. How is that for the end user?
For the stable swaps, the slippage is quite low. So the way you kind of think about it is, this isn't an AMM DEX. It's more a decentralized peer-to-peer auction network. And you embed a fee into the intention, and then that fee is the incentive for someone to actually facilitate. And so the larger the fee, the quicker you're going to find someone to actually do that facilitation. But for the most part, like our network is very fast and efficient, so we're trying to keep the fees to be as low as possible. But we replaced this slippage with the concept of a fee auction market. So if you wanted it to be as fast as possible, then you would just increase that fee allocation, and then you'll have a ton of people who want to actually facilitate that. But if you want like the best price possible, then you would want to have like a really tight fee allocation, with a caveat that there will be less people competing for that fee level. So that's the way to kind of think of it. We don't have the concept of slippage. It's more of a fee auction market.
Okay, so it's like you'll talk about Cardano needs a fee market or it doesn't need a fee market in terms of prioritizing transactions, but it's basically like that, like Ethereum or anything, where the person who pays the higher fee generally gets pushed through quicker. So in times of big volatility, maybe you do want to put an extra fee on it to make sure that you can get your swap finished out as quick as possible. Anything else before we close out that'd be good? I think giving people a good introduction to Mynth, how it works behind the scenes, as well as for the end user, hopefully MyUSD, the difference there, and the upcoming IDO. I can leave links to all of this below, but anything else you leave people with?
I think we've covered pretty much everything. This has been a pretty detailed conversation. I think I'll just reiterate, the problem that we're trying to solve is this core issue of the inability to go between the different networks and also go between fiat networks. So there's this core issue is if I want to go from my bank account to the blockchain, that is like a difficult task without going through a custodian. But with that as like the core mission, is that we want to bring accessibility into the crypto ecosystem and make crypto not feel like crypto. So that in the end, it's just going to be an app with a balance on your phone, and you're not going to have to worry about, what blockchain is this token on. It's just going to be, I have this token, or you want that token. Okay, let's just send it, and Mynth will take care of that complexity. And then you as an end user are not even going to be thinking of what is a blockchain, what's Ethereum, what's Solana, what is Cardano. You shouldn't have to care about that. So that is the core problem that we are solving, and I think we've come up with a pretty innovative way to help bring more adoption to blockchain in general.
Yeah, and actually, just for some people who might be familiar with, I think is it Simple Swap or Changely and different ones that do this type of thing without you registering for a centralized exchange. But when you use entities like that, you can always get called up for KYC. So it could stop in the middle. You think your transfer has gone through, and then you get the email that you need to KYC before you can complete that. That won't happen with your system because of it's decentralized the way that it's working. It's not going through any one centralized entity, is it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So like Simple Swap was a huge inspiration for like what we wanted to build, because I think Simple Swap has the solution, or like has the usability for like how the experience should be. Like I want to go from one token to another token on a different network. So they've done that part brilliantly, but they rely on centralized entities, and so it works like 99% of the time. The problem is you don't want to be caught up in that 1% of the time, and you always think like, oh, it's not going to be me, it's not going to be me, but it's not going to be you until it is you, and eventually it will be you if you use these things every single day, and then you're stuck, and then you have your money stuck, and then they will backtrack, and they're like, hey, like what were these last 50 transactions that you did? And so that's not the situation you want to be in as a user, and so that's why we wanted to build a more permissionless system.
Great. Look, I think we've given people a really good introduction, probably a lot more than just an introduction today. I will leave the links down below. Robert, thanks for your time. I definitely learned a lot more about this. I really do want to see you successful, because a lot of what you're trying to build is the UX that people need when they're in blockchain, that I don't need to understand the differences between all the chains. I can just have one simple interface to go and do the swaps. Everyone watching, thanks for tuning in. Give the video a like, ask questions in the comment section below. I can put them to Robert and the team, maybe bring them back on again if there's enough questions. Do share it out to let people know what's going on. Robert, we'll talk soon, and thanks everyone for watching.